Hello everyone, I hope you're well. Welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm now going to start our next snippet. So we've done snippet 93 and 94, and I have to say I adore these. And I always go back to make sure I've got the numbers right. So this was 91 and 92. And I love looking back on them because it gives me an idea. You know, it gives me ideas again to use my stamps. And I just love looking back on everything and all the snippets that we've done in sort of varying styles. It's just lovely. Just looking back on each of them. I absolutely adore it, looking back. Just love them, absolutely love them. So we've done snippet 93 and 94, and I must admit they are a favourite. I absolutely adore how those came out. So we're now going to do snippet 95. 95, wow, but it's lovely looking back on them. So we're going to do snippet 95, and I'll forget the number all the way through and probably say the wrong number as well. But you know what I'm like by now. So the thing that has inspired the snippet is I'm looking back on the last Thrinches I did, again, which I just adore. So having all these, the Thrinches, the snippets, it's just wonderful to have a little book or books just to look back to inspire us to use our products, and it gives us ideas that flow onto other things. So this Thrinchie is inspired the snippet using the bubble background. So I'm going to use the bubble stamp. These are now back in stock. It's been very popular, the bubble background stamp. I just love it. So we're going to use that one. So let's take our bubble background, and you can see I'm pulling the acetate and I can just roll the stamp. There's no need to stretch it. I'll take an acrylic block, and I haven't got the ink pad out. So we'll take our Versamark and we're going to ink the stamp with the Versamark, and as always we're going to do lots of tapping with that Versamark just to make sure we've got a good layer of ink, which is the same whatever ink we're using. And I haven't got a piece of copier paper because I'm hopeless, so I'm just going to add the bubbles here. We're actually going to fill the whole background of the card with the bubble stamp. And the wonderful thing about an A7 stamp like this is it may be an A7 stamp, but you can extend it and create a whole background with it, so it's really handy. Now I had to buy some more embossing powder, but oh, I'd got this in my cupboard, so I can't remember when I bought it. It's a Wow embossing powder, opaque bright white, so we shall see what that's like. And we'll just put the paper straight on top of the card, and I'm just going to add the embossing powder just so that I can see where I'm going. Now if you've got a piece of card that you have used, you know, you've had it in your stock for a long time, it's not a fresh piece of card, and you've handled it quite a bit, then make sure that you just use your anti-static bag, and then your embossing powder will just stick where you want it to stick. So we're going to add again, and you don't want it all looking the same, so lift it, lower it just a little bit, just so it changes a little bit. And the most important thing isn't necessarily the pressing, it's actually allowing that ink just to do its thing, absorb onto that surface, make an impression. So it's not about overly pressing It's just a little patience, that's all. I don't know why I put the lid on that, to be honest. Well, I'll probably do. It's probably because I'm a disaster area and I'd probably knock it over, that's why. And again, I'm going to use, you can swap it round. It can be upside down. It doesn't matter. You can change your bubbles around. So let's turn it upside down so that it looks completely different, which is the wonderful thing about this bubble stamp, is that I can change it around. So let's put that upside down and it'll just make it look a little bit different again for the background. And then just rest, just to give it time. Once you've pressed it once, just give it a little bit of time just to absorb onto that surface. But this stamp is very forgiving, because even if you miss a little bit, it doesn't matter. You can pick the stamp up and just add a little bit with it off the acrylic block. So you can see we've got that lovely print. And then we'll use it upside down again, just to prove that you can use your stamp any which way you want, because that's how I designed it. Then let's add this here, like so. And again, once you've pressed it once, just pause. Just give it a few moments just to absorb onto the surface of that card. There we go. And then just add the embossing powder again. And I'm just going to lift this up just to show you something. So what I mean is, can you see we've got a beautiful background there, but say you didn't want a little gap here, not that it matters to me in the slightest. What you can do, roll your stamp off the acrylic block and you can just pick a little area of it. So let's just pick that area there. And what you can do is just add a little bit of the stamping. So let's bring in, let's see if I actually did touch the card then. Yes, I did. So you can actually fill a gap. So if you've missed and you're not happy, it's very forgiving. Let's move that out of the way. And I'll just lift this up so you can see. You can see I've now added a little bit. It's very forgiving. So we'll now melt our embossing powder. Just give that heat tool a little bit of time just to heat up before we go to the actual card. But I adore that stamp. Absolutely adore it. It's a fantastic background with very little effort, but it looks very effective. And I'm just holding the card up, save me heating the non-stick craft sheet as well. And once it starts to turn, it'll turn quite quickly. I've now started to stop these little heat tools because I prefer the gentler heat. I know with the heat tools that have got a long point, they heat faster, but I'm in no rush. Just like the gentler, even though it's got the same heat output as a paint stripper, it's just gentle and doesn't blow that embossing everywhere, which is what I like. So just lift that up. Just bring and just turn your card just so that you don't heat the same area over and over again. And I also hold it up because then I can just see really nicely in the light as that turns. There we go. And I just think this is a beautiful instant backdrop, and it's just fantastic. Just wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. My camera's like, are you kidding? But I've even got so many of the fine lines as well. Absolutely adore that. So shall we just move a couple of things out of the way, because then we've got a little bit more desk space. I know. And also on this wonderful bubble stamp, there is a little sentiment saying being creative is a way of life, which it is for me. Now if I place this back in here, then we're not searching for it, well, she says. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to take the magnolia stamp, and I'm going to, it's a silhouette stamp which works quite nicely. Make sure that wasn't off my hand. So let's take this, my little text stamp, again used quite a bit, so if it comes unsticky like that, just give it a little wipe, because all as it is you've got debris etc on your stamp. Now if I don't know what stamp I want to use, take both of your stamps off. Let's place that back on again, and let's use a little bit of the acetate just to plan. So do I want several on them? No, I'm going to use the big one, I think, but I love to just have a little play to see exactly what I want. I can still change your mind, I often do. So have I missed a little bit of embossing there? I don't think it's, let's just heat that a little bit there. Yes, I've just missed a little tiny, not that it'll matter because I probably won't stamp there anyway, but again, your acetate is invaluable because you can see exactly where you want to stamp. What I'm going to do then is I'm going to take Portobello VersaFine Clair, and I'm going to ink that stamp up. Just lots of tapping, a little bit overzealous there with the stamping. So just lots of tapping with your ink. You've got a silhouette stamp here, so you want to make sure that that's nice and wet. You can tilt your stamp, you can see there's all that juicy ink on there. And I'm then going to, let's turn that this way. I'm then going to turn the stamp, and I'm just going to allow that just to sit on that. I could just press with one finger. There's nothing, you know, you don't have to hurt your wrists or anything. I can just press with one finger. But the most important thing is to give that time just to absorb onto the surface. I see a lot of creatives that are always in a rush. There is no rush. The whole point of your hobby is that you enjoy it. So we'll just allow that just to work its way onto the surface. Plus, I've got that embossing on there, and I want the ink to absorb through the embossing, just so that we get our lovely technique. There we go. There we go. Just so you can see, you can't tell whether the magnolia comes first or the embossing. So then I'm going to take a little bit of kitchen roll, she says. And then I'm just going to take the kitchen roll, just a little bit, And then I'm just going to sort of turn and twist the kitchen roll just so that we remove a little bit of the ink on the embossed area. So just give that a little bit of a, you can use a very, I mean my wipe is very sort of dryish, but you can use a little bit of a wipe because the water won't be affected. It won't affect the ink. Okay. So then, I mean, you could quite easily use part of your branch and bring it down if you wished. But I'm going to continue with the larger image. So we're just going to continue with the larger image. And then I'm going to stamp this here, like so. And again, just giving that a little time just to absorb onto the surface of that card, just not rushing that process too much. So we'll just give that a little time. Because it's quite a large stamp, so you just need to give that a little bit of time to work onto that surface. And you know, I'll leave it at that at the moment. And again, I'll just use that little bit of a wipe just to clean that up a little bit. And then I'm going to grab, which I should have grabbed beforehand, my Distress Oxide ink. So we're going to use Vintage Photo. And my little brush. So I'm going to use Vintage Photo. Let's spritz that with a little water. And then we're just going to just go around our card and just add a little bit of the colour. And obviously the embossing will resist the ink, which is just what you want. You want it to resist that ink. So let's go around there. And you can see I'm going over the actual floral as well. And then I'm just going to spritz the actual card a little bit as well, so that the ink moves quite nicely. Let's grab a little bit more of that ink. And we'll just, by adding the water, it just blends into the background very loosely. So I'm adding a little bit more. There we go. We'll grab that heat tool. And what you want to do is just give that a gentle heat, because you don't want to react that embossing again. So just give it a gentle heat. You don't want to sort of make it so that your embossing you know, isn't nice and clear. So we're just going to go around the floral again so that it's a little bit darker. Now don't forget, this is your background to your design. So you're just creating the background. So let's just come in a little bit darker. So we're just using this to come in a little bit darker, just around the floral. Because what you're doing is you're creating a background. So you're just creating your background, and you can just let that rest a bit. We'll come in a little bit with that shortly. And then let me just grab a little bit of, where have you gone? Oops. I'm obsessed with Distress Oxide Salvage Patina. So I'm just going to add a little bit more water now. And I'm just going to add some of my Salvage Patina. And you can see I just add little bits of that. You can spray if you wish. It's no problem at all. But I like to just add little bits of that. And then I can just spritz with a little bit of water. Now when it's really moist, that's when I like to sort of spray a little bit, so it's a little bit more concentrated. There we go. And I don't have to worry about the embossed areas because they just resist the ink anyway. So I'm just using that little bit of a wipe. So I'm just going to leave that on one side at the moment. I'm then going to take the stamp once again, and I'm going to stamp this onto a piece of white card. Let's just give the area underneath a dry, because if my acrylic blocks are wet, I then can't actually move them, which is about standard for me. So I'm going to take sand dune, which I couldn't get the words out. So I'm going to take some sand dune. I'm going to take portobello. A little bit of portobello. I'm then going to take a little bit of the Distress Oxide spray and a little bit of water, which the oily ink will not be affected by the water. Let's see what we get. It's always good to say, let's see what we get. What if? So it's always a good idea always to ask yourself, what if? Let's just see what we've got. So there we go. So it works quite nicely. Now I want to stamp it again because I know I quite like that blue. So let's do it again. So we've got sand dune. Take the sand dune. Then let's take portobello. Little bit of portobello. Then let's spritz with a little bit more of the oxide spray and clean your bottle. So the Salvage Patina, a little bit of water, because we know that the oily inks won't be affected by the moisture. Let's have a look at this one. Press that down and allow it to do its thing onto the surface of that card. So we'll just give it a bit of time. This is now soaking wet. But it's always good to have a little play. It works quite nicely if you have a little play. Just love it. I love the fact that we've got that and some sort of texture as well. So another little technique just to play around with. So let's take our little magnolia now. Now we don't want to add too much dimension, so we don't want to be using like our pin flare, because obviously we've got it in our little book, and the book, when you've got as many snippets in as I've got, already gets quite bulky, so you don't want to add extra bulk to that. Let's go around. There we go. And this is quite soft because it's got some moisture in there. We've now got our little piece of card. Let me just move that out of the way. Let's just give this a dry because it's got a lot of moisture in there now. So just give it a dry. Just from the back. Still quite a bit of moisture in there. If you can leave that to dry naturally, that'll be better. But that's entirely up to you if you're a little bit impatient, like Tracy is, who's drying it now. Because I like to just carry on with the project. So I'm going to use a little bit of water and just dab our background. So just dab your background. And then I'm going to take my Inktense pencil, which is the, is it 2010 or so, Chinese ink anyway, Chinese ink. So I'm just using the Chinese ink just to go around our, and if you can't see, place the one that you've cut out. If you can't see exactly sort of where your line is, just take your cutout piece and that will give you a little guide if you're a little bit stuck and can't see the area, because you've just added this as your background piece and you want it as a background. It's not in the foreground, it's not the focal image. That's it. So just add a little bit round here. So I'm just going around the shape that I can see just with the Inktense pencil. Inktense is permanent when dry. Just and then we'll just take our water, our brush again with some water, and I don't have to worry too much that there's brown on there because I'm just pulling out that Inktense, so I don't have to worry too much with the brown and dragging this out. And the good thing about your Inktense is that once it's dry, it's permanent. Just blend that out, drag it out into the surface where all over your embossing, drag that out. And it's fine because your embossing just resists that ink. Just come around. And it's always lovely to be able to use your stamps not just as a focal image but also in the background. It's lovely to use it in the background as well. It really works if you can use it in the background. So I'm just going in with a little bit more detail of the black, and you can always tell when Tracy's enjoying herself because she faffs even more because I just love it. So you can always tell when I'm enjoying myself. Run out of water. So just making sure that that's blended, just so that you've got your background and you can see that in the background. And obviously it's the background. So I'm just going to use my clean kitchen roll. Doesn't look very clean. There we go. Let me just see where I want. A little bit of shape to the floral. Now I can't make it too bulky because that won't work. So you don't want to make it too bulky on your card. We can even sort of just add, if you wanted to, oops, don't want, you see, if you were creating a card, for instance, you could take each, so if you're creating a card, you can even add, oops, dimension to your petals, just a little bit if you wish. Where's my adhesive? Enjoying myself far too much, so I can adhere just the bottom because I don't need to use a pin flare. Don't need to use any pin flare. I can just add dimension without adding any bulk if I wish. So it's quite easy just to add a little bit of dimension without any of that bulk. So just cutting out part of that floral. And I can just add the adhesive just in the middle area so that I don't add any to the top. And I'm not adding any bulk. What are you doing, Tracy? You're not putting it in the right place, woman. There we go. So I've got a little bit of dimension without there being too much bulk to add to my design. But now I just need to dry this a little bit more because I know that my white pen is not really going to work. So this is sort of going on here as well, but I also want to show you with the, good grief, how many things can you knock over? Now I did bring a new white pen, and of course, did I keep, hopefully this is the white pen. So just go around, just adding a little bit more of the white, just touches to my background, just touches to the background. You'll probably see them better in your own project as you add those touches of white. So this is just my background, and then we're going to add this. So then I'm going to, let's try it with Portobello first. So I'm going to take the Portobello, let's grab the text stamp from the same Magnolia. So we want the same text stamp from the Magnolia, and I've put an arrow on mine so I can see which way up it goes. Let's see if it'll work with the Portobello and it's not too juicy, because normally I use an ink pad that I've used quite a bit, like a black one that has been used for many months. But let's see if it'll work with this. This is a bit juicy. So let's add the text, take that off, add a little bit of text here, take that off, and let's see if that text shows up on our Magnolia. So you're using the kissing technique, just so that you can see this. You can still do your kissing technique. Can you see? It works beautifully. So what I'll do now, I'll use the reverse of this card. Now I know that it works. We'll do that again. Take a little bit more care. Take the text stamp. Stamp that on there, and you can see you're getting ink off. Press that on there and on your card, and you can see that you're getting the ink from there. Now, let's stamp now. So just give that a little bit of time, just to absorb onto the surface. Let me lift this up, can you see? You've got the text on there, just so you can see. Doesn't matter which one you use, you have the text on there, which works really nicely. So let's take this. I'm cutting out right to the edge on this one. But you've got lots of techniques there that you can actually play with and experiment a little bit more with. So just have a little bit of an experimentation with your different inks, etc. And it just makes your stamps look completely different, which is just wonderful. The ink may have dried on my stamp now, but I was going to say you could probably get, if I hadn't to let it dry, another generation of stamping. Yes, we could have got another generation of stamping as well, which works really nicely. Just works beautifully. I always like to add a little bit of shape to the petals, even if it's just a bit sort of, there we go. So you've got the background, but obviously it's the background. So we're going to place these here. So let's place that one second, and we'll place this one first. That's why you don't have to worry about your background. It's your background. You're just adding detail on that background. And I've got dimension without adding too much bulk. I keep saying I need to fill this up. But can you see I'm just adding a little bit of adhesive. Just, Tracy, I think you can say this is running out now. Tuck that behind there, like so. Just press that down. And I've not stuck down the top of the flower. I've just stuck down sort of in the centre. There we go. Just so, just love that. I'm then going to take my Alpha Florals, because I can take one of my little critters now. So I'll just take the pheasant. That one. Let's grab a smaller acrylic block. I'll just take that small acrylic block, and now I'm going to use my Nocturne ink. So let's take that Nocturne and just add our little pheasant just here. And again, you can see I don't rush adding the pheasant. And he's sort of in the background because he's got quite a bit of embossing on there, which I'll show you. Let's just mop that up, and then you can just, you can see that it's a little bit more in the background than I would probably like. So what I'm going to do is we'll just cut our little pheasant out. So let's add, because I want him to stand out a little bit more than that. Put that back, Tracy. because if I show you the Thrinchy, you can see that's how it looks with the embossing, but I want him to just stand out a little bit more on this, because that area I've added there has got a sort of a thicker layer of embossing, so I want the pheasant to stand out just a little bit more than it is doing. So let's just cut that out. You could really leave the feet if you wish. Because I've sort of got the feet stamped onto the background. Let's cut that out. There we go. So I'll just add my little pheasant now. Just take a little bit off the tail. There we go. It just stands out a little bit more, don't you, mate? There we go. With your embossing on there, you just need to give that a little bit of time, just so that your adhesive sticks nicely, just so that you've got your little pheasant on there as well, looking up at the florals. Now what I can do is just take, enough won't come off there, so we'll just put that on there. I'm going to add my brush here, and just to make a little bit of paint. So now if I want to add a little bit more blue, or this salvage patina, I can just add a little bit more blue now without adding any more moisture. I can just bring in a little bit more of the bluey colour, should I wish. If it touches the wet brown, obviously it can go greeny, and that's why I'm adding a little bit more blue, because my other layers are now dry. So I can just add a little bit more of that blue. Let's just put the lid on that so that we don't do the inevitable and knock it over. But if you clean your brush, there you go, you can still drag out little bits if you wish. There we go. I'm then going to add some white splatters. So let's add our white splatters. Now, if you're really struggling with the Posca pen, because that's doing nothing, so I'm not going to sort of exert myself too much. I'm just going to very gently get that paint flowing on the Posca pen. I've given it a bit of a shake. That should be enough just to get that going again. So just add some of those splatters, and where I've added the wet with the blue, it'll just sort of bleed out, which is rather nice. Where's my, let's place some of this back so we can just finish this off. That way, Tracy. So we've got our magnolia stamp. Let's take that off. Place that back, and then I'm going to just add the word dream. Obviously I don't need an acrylic block that big, but let's actually be good and clean some of that off the acrylic block. I don't worry too much because they're tools. Where's the little? It's got the word dream. Little bit of card, which we've got here. Black ink pad. You could quite easily, if you're making a card, you could even use this 3rd generation print. So there's always ways to sort of move it on a few levels as well. There's always a way to do that. Just add the word dream. Haven't I been good putting everything back? Which makes a change for me, really. Let's... And then... Just making it so I've literally got the word and not too much card. I'm going to add the word dream just here, like so. Add that here. I'll just give that a couple of seconds just for that adhesive just to grab hold. I spend my life looking for lids, to be honest. There we go. And hopefully that's taken hold. And we'll just add a little bit of moisture. There we go. Let's bring in our book. And then this will be our next snippet, just so that you can see all the detail just in there. What you can also do, if you want to sort of, do you like how I say, that's it, that's the snippet done, and I'm going, oh, and you can just do, oh, and you can just do. If you want to, you can even highlight a few of your sort of bubble areas with a little bit of pencil. Obviously, when it's dry, you can go in with the bubbles and just add a little bit more pencil work and just add a few touches of the blue. Just add a little bit more depth. If you quite like the blue with the brown, you can come in and just add a few more areas just so that it stands out even more. But you can just keep playing. You can make your background just even more interesting by just adding little touches. So you can use your oxide spray or you can use a pencil. I will shut up now. So let's bring this in. Bring this into our background just so that you can see. And that is your next snippet done. And you know what's gone in to the snippet, and it just makes it so much more rewarding when you turn the pages and then you look back at your designs, and it's just a pleasure to look back on. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope you'll give Snippet 95 a go. Love to all, and I'll see you all soon. Bye for now.